It's typical because it's a pharmaceutical company that has a new and pursuing a new business model. And also do this. I lecture quite a lot in the corporate sector, and this is the first time that I've been co-invited to talk to the corporate sector in the morning and the university in the afternoon. I will Twitter it, and I hope it will spread over the world, as an example. My task is to give an overview lecture. I've taken as my speciality to be the eagle's view, or the spaceship view of the world. How does the world look like? And to tell it also not just now, but see the trends, how we have come to where we are, and in what direction the trends will go. It's not my own data. I actually only stand on the shoulder of great analysts and civil servants who compile that data. And I just try to make it more understandable and to make it simple. Can I have my image, please? This is the exciting moment, you know. And you get, yeah, thank you. I would like to have it here, please. There we are, there we are. Now, we've been living in a world from 1800, and this is really simplified, that has been diverging. Economy was at a low level, health was at a low level, education was at a low level in the entire world more than 200 years ago. But one part of the world, starting in West Europe, industrialized, improved their social and institutional systems of governance, and improved health and education, and they took off like this. The rest of the world remained below. And then we ended up in the middle of last century in a diverging world. It was just going apart and apart. That world is over. That phase is over. Today, those who are up there, they continue their economic growth, but not as fast as they used to. They continue to get longer and longer education, but they don't improve their education with so many years more as they used to do. And they improve their democratic system, improve a little, but not as much as it was when it came from more dramatic methods of governance. So the progress is slower. We don't know where they are going. I take this to 2100. We don't know really where they are going. Future is very difficult to predict, you know. And the ones down here, they are catching up. This is the main force in the world today. Of course, main driver is China. But today we have to realize that China was just the first one. Now it's countries with much more people that are following China. Better social situation, better education, better health, smaller families, and fast-growing economy, or relatively fast-growing economies. And while they were down here, their population grew. So this is much more people moving up, what you have. But all doesn't move. There are some countries that move very slowly. And there are a few countries that are going in the wrong direction. We have tragic countries with civil war like Afghanistan, Somalia, now Central African Republic, South Sudan. We have a war crisis, as in Iraq and Syria, which is very special in its character. And we are just now, this week, facing a very special character with the Ebola epidemic. So we have this, but we can no longer talk about two worlds, that is one which is up there and the rest are down there. Because we have countries up there, we have those here on the way, we have those down there, and we have those going down. So, this is the end of thinking, developed and developing world. Erase that out of your memory. That's my main task. And my task is much more difficult than my colleague at Karolinska Institute, because he teaches about stem cells. You've heard about stem cells? Have you understood them? Hardly not at all. You don't have any preconceived ideas about them. So when he can teach about stem cells from scratch. When I teach about the world, I have to start with the ideas we already have from the world. And the main task in teaching about the world and where it's going is taking away the old idea and the old knowledge. So this is my challenge. And I used to start by putting questions. Gapminder Foundation is a strategic non-profit. We are like a museum or a non-profit producing teaching material on the Creative Commons license, which is free to use. We will later this year come with a whole bunch of new products, which you will be interested in, including income distribution of the world. And let me ask this question. What is the life expectancy of the world population? The world as large. A child born in the world today, this year, how long can they expect to live if things remain as they are today? 50 years, 60 years, or 70 years? The question is really about, if I was an average citizen of the world, would I be alive or dead? So what do you think? Can I just take an answer by hand? How many think that it's about 50 years? Hands up. How many think 60 years? How many think 70 years? More or less the answer I used to get. We have done web-based surveys with the best web-based survey companies we can get, and we get this result in Sweden and we get this in Norway. And then we are pretty sure that it's right, because Sweden and Norway are so similar. So if you have two companies doing the same thing and getting almost the same results, then they are quite reliable. And then we had Great Britain there, and we had America there, and this is the right result, 70 years. The life expectancy of the world is 70 years. Your answer on average, a quick guess, you're about 17 to 20 years behind your time. And that's quite a lot to start off at such a young age, to be behind. You have to catch up. The average life expectancy in the world is 70. That's what you see in Bangladesh. In Vietnam, it's 75. The world has come much longer in health than we think. And where do people live? This is another macro thing to know. We have 7 billion people in the world today. If you're very, very careful, it's 7.2. But I simplify. As long as I can take away a digit or something, I do it. 7 billion. Where do they live? I divided the world in 4 regions. The Americas, everything there. Europe. And to give Europe a chance, I decided to make Turkey European and the whole of Russia. We will be so few otherwise. We must have some chance. And then Asia is here. But on the other hand, I said that Australia is Asian. They have to get used to that now, finally. And they have most of their trade. If you look at trade of Australia, the last 10 years they swapped over. Now they're really trading. They're really trading with Asia. And they're integrating in the Asian economy. Even academically, they are integrating very much into Asia now. So where do they live? 1 billion live in America, 1 in Europe, 1 in Africa, and 4 in Asia. This you must remember. The PIN code of the world, 1114. And sometimes we don't get this, we don't get this. I see Helsinki thinking, yeah, we have to really think about Asia. You are working in Latin America, and that's fine, but it's not so many people. This is where the market is. Of course, this is not the market, I'm now teaching, students are going to deal with money about people. This is my topic, public health I come from. Now, the interesting, however, is the future. In the future, there will be no more people in Europe. Even with immigration, Europe is shrinking at present. Even with immigration and Turkey, we are shrinking. Here we will get about 100 million more retired people in South America, but that won't make much difference. They won't play football, they won't dance samba. There's not 100 million retired people. It remains the same. It's 1 billion. In Asia, we will get 2050. In Asia, we'll get 1 billion more. And by that 1 billion, the fast population growth in Asia will be over. It may continue to grow slowly, or it may even have started to shrink. In Africa, by mid-century, we will have 1 billion more. So Asia will grow with 25% and then stop. Africa will grow with 50% and continue to grow. And before the fast population growth is over in the world in the end of this century, slow growth may continue, or it may have started to shrink. But by 2100, we will have had 1 or probably 2 billion more in Africa. This is what we are heading for. 11 billion plus minus 2 billion. We don't know it precise, but what we know is that it's slowing down. And I will go through that with you, why this happened. But what I want to show you is whether we are going to be 9.5 or we are going to be 12, the pattern of distribution will be the same. And if I divide in North and South America and West and East Europe, what I call the Old West, which is a concept. Many still talk about the Western world, but they don't define whether Poland is a part of it, whether Russia is a part of it, and what it is, But if I call that the Old West, West Europe and North America, that will be less than 10% of the world population. When I was a student, when I went to school, it was 1/3 of world population. It's really shrinking down to a relatively insignificant part of the world population. 80% of world population will be living in Asia and Africa. The world trade will move from the Atlantic, and now, short period, the Pacific, it will be Indian Ocean. If you invest in real estate, you buy a piece of beachfront property here on the East African coast. First business advice I've given you. When I lecture to the hedge fund at this hedge fund manager, at this time, they all will take up their cell phone and they start texting, you know. And many think it's funny. Especially, I recommend the beach property in Somalia. Somalia has a beautiful beach, really beautiful beach. And look how many people want to go to that beach in the future when we use solar energy to desalinate seawater. My closest colleague who took over as me as teacher, Associate Professor Asli Kolani, she had a medical training in Somalia. She's a fine malaria researcher at the Karolinska Institute. And she last summer bought beachfront property north of Mogadishu. And why did she do so? She said, as politics are going in West Europe, how do I know that my family and my children are really safe here? How can I trust the pension funds in the public system here in Europe? I can have one foot in Sweden, I better buy some beachfront property there. It's interesting. The diaspora of the Somali people are very capable all over the world today. And I tell you this as a way looking forward what we can expect happen. Now, Florida, don't buy beachfront property in Florida. Second business advice today. You get two advice here. It's already overpriced. It's already overpriced, you know, and seawater will come up. Whereas this beach is nicer because it goes like this. So even if the seawater rises, there will still be a nice beach, you know. So this is much, much better in any. Now, how did this become so popular? What was it that stopped investment here 150 years ago? The Pirates of the Caribbean. Today they run very realistic films about them. They've taken away all the rapes and so on, you know. And we make mythical films about it. But it was the same problem. Mississippi River was not connected to world trade because of the pirates. Key West, if you ever go to Florida, you will drive down on that fantastic road to Key West. That Key West was built to fight the pirates. And Somalia will fight the pirates. And the most probable is that they will make it. And they will have an enormous diaspora in the future. This is about looking into the future, you know, looking in the future. And it's very special. We have a tendency to look too much in the rear mirror. We look back in the rear mirror, and that must be a special problem in Italy that has such a great history. In Sweden, it's a little easier. We don't have so much to brag about backwards. Our hope is for the future, really. You know? And the world as such is changing, and it will continue to change. Can we trust these numbers? The United Nations Population Division, does that sound trustworthy? Does Berkeley sound trustworthy? Yeah. So it's good to know that the head of United Nations Population Division is Professor John Wilmoth, who had the chair in demographic at Berkeley up to he got his even more honorable position at United Nations. United Nations at its core has the finest civil servants at the highest capacity level who do estimates for the world that has nothing to do with diplomacy, advocacy, or aid, or anything like that. And they do this. They did the first, that group did the first estimate 1958 of world population, and they said it would grow like this. They said it would be about 6.3 billion by the end of the century. And the press, the media in West Europe and North America, at that time they wrote, this is stupid, this is irrelevant. Every person knows that there will never ever be 1.3 billion people in India. They are Muslims and Hindus and they will kill each other. I mean, this was the attitude of West Europe. West Europe have a problem, and North America have a problem. They have a combination, a toxic combination of arrogance and ignorance about the world. And this is getting better. It was even worse before. So what did happen? What did happen with this? We know it now. We know population through censuses, not for the registration of birth and death. Censuses are done in all countries. And there are some few parts. In northern Nigeria, they used to mess it up, not because they are not capable, but because they have conflict of interest, you know, with the parliamentary seats and so on. Some other countries have had war, you know, and China have some ethnic group that doesn't want to report all children. But these are minor things. We know how many people there are. And this was the result. In the year 2000, it was like this. Respect for demography. A 42-year prediction, they were 4% wrong. Has economists ever done that? Anyone here who can remember a 42-year projection that was 4% wrong? Has medicine never done that? Did we tell you about HIV in advance, swine flu in advance? Did we tell you last year that Ebola was coming? No. Demography is absolutely amazing on how they can predict what will happen. So what do they say now about the number of children in the world? Take away the whole population, take the number of children. It was less than 1 billion, 0.8 billion when I was born here in 1948. Then it increased to more than doubled up to the end of the century. And it reached 2 billion. One of these three lines, one of them, is the prediction by the United Nations Population Division. The other two I made up, just to make a quiz. And now we shall test this. I also work innovation. This is a new... I'm not satisfied with the laser pointer, so I'm working now on a more solid point. I managed to solidify the beam of the laser pointer in an ecological way that can be recycled. And I work together with the gardener here of this university, so it's a great product. This is the third business opportunity, to invest in the production of the pointer. Do you think it will be 4 billion? Will it increase to 3 billion, or will it remain 2 billion? How many think 4 billion? Hand up. How many think 3 billion? How many think 2 billion? It's interesting. It's one of the most important events in the history of mankind, you know. And I will show you the Swedish results just here. When you see this result from Sweden, you got a quite good idea what is the correct answer, isn't it? It's the answer that fewest number of Swedes pick. Is 11%. The number of children in the world have stopped increasing. It's the biggest event in the history of mankind that ever was completely missed by university and media. And I can't understand why, because it's so important. It's so important that this was missed, that this has happened. So actually today, it's the peak birth this year. The mid-prediction is that this is the year when mankind, humans, the women in the world give birth to most children. Of course, these are predictions. It may be a little more here. It may even start to fall more rapidly. Like that. The number of children have stopped growing in the world. The number of people is growing. How can that be possible? Is it after all true that people come from outer space in spaceships in the night and they settle in the world? Or how can the total population grow when the number of children are not growing? But the most important behind this change, I will explain these two things. The reason that children have stopped growing is that the number of babies born per woman is decreasing like this. This is Europe. It was 6 at 1800. It started to fall earlier, then it was falling faster, and it was falling faster and faster and faster, and it's now below 2. And this is America. America had a baby boom, and then they are down to 2. That is North America, including South America. Brazil today have less children per woman than Sweden, 1.8. This is Asia. They were high. Paul Ehrlich got nervous. He wrote the population bomb, and then they fell like this. They're down at 2. How can they be at 2? Pakistan has 3. India has 2.5. China 1.6. Japan 1.3. It is because they are countries who have both higher and lower, but average is 2 in Asia. So Asia has already come down to this level. Africa, is Africa ever changing? Yes, it is. It's on its way of changing. Urban Africa is ahead of rural Africa. Some countries is even lower. But it is changing slower than Asia. This is important to see. Asia did this faster and more densely populated areas probably. They are more coherent nations. Africa is slower, but not as slow as Europe. Europe didn't reach its level because of fast progress. It's because we started early in Europe. Everything started early in Europe. That's why Europe reached its position. Many other countries, many other regions are now developing fast. For instance, child mortality today is falling faster in Africa south of Sahara than it ever did in West Europe. Did you hear me? Child mortality year by year over the last 20 years is falling faster in Africa south of Sahara, Tanzania, Ghana, Cameroon, Ethiopia, lots of countries. Nigeria not so fast, but in other countries even faster. It's really successful what is happening. And fertility rate will be coming after. How can we know these sort of things? Well, in the past, 2 parents had 6 children, but 4 died before growing up to become parents themselves. What then happened with the Industrial Revolution was this situation, not that they got more children. Population growth is not due to more children, it's due to more children surviving. And what resulted in the great emigration from both Northern Europe and Italy to the America is that things got better. More people survived, and they increased the population like this. And 25% of the Swedish population went to Minnesota. And the world becomes 7 billion. And many name this. I think you have heard this expression, population explosion. It's an unacceptable expression. It's an X word. It's forbidden from now and onwards. What does it mean and why? Because the basis is the title of Paul Ehrlich's book, The Population Bomb. At that time, children born by Asian parents and loved by them was labeled bombs, because they were going to be communists and they were going to be a threat to the nuclear bomb that the United States had. It's very clear. This was the idea of the publisher, not the author, but the publisher. And it became a very successful book. And from that was coined the idea of population explosion. Population explosion is a nasty and unacceptable term where you label someone else's loved baby a terrorist bomb. A loved baby is not a terrorist bomb. You have to know the difference between bombs and babies. And don't label babies bombs. It's unacceptable. I can tell you, wise leader, academic leader, politicians and authors in Africa and Asia, they don't like this. You make your business is ended if you come and talk about your country having population explosion. It's fast population growth. It's fine. We have a descriptive term for it. It's derogative. It's unacceptably derogative to do that. Then people say, oh, it's exponential growth. It's very dangerous because it's exponential growth. Let us see if it's exponential growth. Yes, 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 until there. Since 1968, the world population growth is completely linear. Completely linear. The maximum growth rate of the world population was 1968, 2.1%. Since then, the growth rate has fallen and fallen and fallen. And you know what happens with falling interest rates. You don't get exponential growth from the fund, isn't it? When I show this to the hedge fund manager, they get very nervous. They say, oh, that's ugly. Let's move the capital, they say. We can't have it here. Because since the growth rate is falling and falling, it's because the fertility rate was falling. So we know what will happen, because we have almost reached the new balance. In the old balance, it was death that kept control of population. In the new balance, it's love that keeps control of population. It's the most important place in life, the bedroom. And the most important talk in life, pillow talk. The young couple whisper into each other's ears, let's make a baby tonight. I remember those nights. Those were the best nights of my life. Then the babies came, and then the nights was not so good any longer. But they were still nice. They were nice. But those nice, you know, when you came to that decision jointly, you know, and you throw the condom away and you made your baby, you know, those were lovely, you know. So it means that parents decide, they don't say, let's get as many babies as possible so at least some survive. Instead of that, they say, let's get as many children as we can take care of, as we can help, so they get a better life, so they improve. The world is almost there. Let me show you more in detail. Here is my beloved bubble graph. I show here number of babies per woman down here. And each bubble is a country. The size of the bubble is the population size. So the big ones here, this is of course China, this is of course India. Red ones are Asia, same colors as before. This is Europe, yellow. Green is America, blue is Africa. And you can see in 1963, they were distributed like this. On this axis is child mortality. Number of children dying per 1,000 born. If 100 dies per 1,000 born, it's 10%. This is 20%, this is 30%, this is 1/3. There were countries where 1 child in 3 were dying. Remember, out of 6 children, 2 were dying. That was fast population growth. So when did the population not grow? Well, that was further away. Then I have to take them away back in history. Let's go back in history. Here we go. Ooh, I have a time machine here. Everyone was up there. Everyone was up there. And then they came down. Some came down faster. That was the West. Remember the diverging world? Some went down into that corner. And then 1963, we ended up with this world, 64. Developed countries, developing countries. Developing countries, large family, high child mortality. Developed countries, small families, low child mortality. Almost no one in between. Almost no one in between. Huh? This is Cuba, this is Singapore. The trading station of the British and Spanish Empire. Very few in between. Now what has happened now? Has all these countries, after they gained their independence, have they provided a better life for their people? Have this aid that has been given to them, has it worked? That was very much focused on getting down child mortality and helping with contraceptives to move over here. So if these countries here have managed to move a little down here, a little to this direction, then the world has become a better place. You agree with that? If they're still stuck up there, it's terrible. It was a failure. So let me start the world. Let me start the world, and I take it down to there, and here we go. 1964, can you see China there? It's a little difficult there, but now they start with family planning, Mao Zedong with family planning, they go for smaller family. This is Brazil, this is Mexico, they don't care about the church. They put on the condom and they get fewer and fewer and fewer children here. Here is Indonesia coming, see here, this is Iran, Islamic Republic of Iran coming here. And now even the African countries are coming. This is Ethiopia, can you see Ethiopia, how fast they are moving, you know. It's really, everyone goes down into that corner, it's a completely new world. And this world, look at it. There's no division any longer between developed and developing countries. When I look at what I call the bedroom, and here is the kitchen and the bathroom. Because if you have soap in the bathroom and water and you have food on the kitchen table and you have a decent home with your family, of course also education, health and some other infrastructure and some income, then you are down here. And almost the whole world are there. Now this is, of course, you would say, oh, it's a one-child policy in China, because that's well known, the one-child policy in China. But look, China has 1.66, 1.7 children per woman. How come? The big, mighty Communist Party say, you shall only have one child, and yet they're 1.7. Why? Because the Communist Party have 100% power in the square. Remember Tiananmen Square? But in the bedroom, there are bigger powers. There are much bigger powers. The power of love, you know, the power of a couple who make decisions for their lives, and the power of women, you know, who make the decision. That's much, much bigger. So China is there. But it's interesting to note then that there's another part of China which is there, Taiwan. They never had a one-child policy, but they have almost one child per woman. And Hong Kong have one child per woman. How come? Where you have no one-child policy, you have one child. Where you have a one-child policy, you are 1.6. There's some, these are the, what are the powers that bring down the number of children in Hong Kong? I was invited to a business conference in Hong Kong. And in that business conference, I ended up with one of the most successful young bankers in Hong Kong. One of your colleagues. She was 37 years old. And she taught me just during that dinner so much about the shifting financial markets in Asia. So I realized she's been working day and night. And at the dessert, I asked her, do you have a family? Oh, no, I haven't had time for that. Do you think about the family? And she looked out of the window. And she took a deep breath and said, yes, I'm thinking about children every day. It's the idea of a husband I can't stand. And this is interesting, that the reason why we see so low fertility rate in some Asian countries, you know, Japan is 1.3. In Italy, you have had low fertility rate. That's nothing compared to the successful Asian countries. And it's what interpretation of the demographers and the sociologists is now, you can have success in schooling and in social life, you can have economic growth, but gender equity is a fight of its own. Gender equity is a fight of its own. It's very slow income. And it can come early in one country, late in another country. And that determines very much how many children you get. And you know, this is important for the economies now. Now we get countries which are not concerned about population growth, but population decrease. And really the main concern is not the total population, it's the composition of the population. Because it's much better to have a balanced population with more or less the same in all the age groups, and not have a very heavy, age-heavy population. So Japan is very concerned. You know what the Narita divorce is? Anyone knows what Narita is? It's the airport in Tokyo, Narita Airport. Narita divorce is a woman around the age of 30 who finally decided to get married, went on the honeymoon. She came back after about 25 days, and when the luggage come on the carousel, she takes it and she walks off. That's a Narita divorce. Japan has the highest divorce rate in 1 month in the world. Because it's really, the women give up their careers and they have to subordinate them to the men and take care of the parents-in-law. It's a real big cultural shift that we are experiencing. Some countries are more successful in this than others are. And this brings down, the one-child policy is irrelevant in China today. They are just not fast enough to take it away. China will very soon start to promote children because that's what Singapore is doing. We had a visit to Sweden almost 1 year ago, when the Vice Prime Minister came with 13 experts, and they were sociologists, economists, you know, all sorts of researchers, and they had one question. I was asked to give the first lecture. You know? So, and the Prime Minister was a very joyful and capable woman, and she said, "We just want to know one thing, how do you make babies?" I was sort of flattered by being asked. It's not Swedes are not used to those sorts of questions, you know. They used to ask us, how do you make ball bearings, how do you make paper or something, but how do you make children? And the interesting thing is Singapore has 1 child per woman, Sweden have 2. We have the same economy, same health service. They're quite similar, except the cultural background and the climate. Otherwise, we are very similar in many ways. And they lack gender equity. We have some sort of gender equity in Sweden. We have 35% of the men are taking the parental leaves now. And that means a climbing fertility rate. We have the Bishop of the Church of Sweden in Stockholm. She lives in a lesbian marriage with a biological son. You know, things change. Things change. It's not that the country doesn't change to become developed and then it remains like that. That's one very interesting thing. So when I talk about population, can you see? I talk about those countries over here, Afghanistan, Congo, that still have many children per woman and they have very fast population growth. The fastest population growth in the world is here, where you have the highest child mortality. Because it's 1 child in 10, it's 1 child in 8 that is dying, but they have 6 to 7 children per woman. That means even at 6 to 7, 1 child dies, they're more than doubling in 1 generation. And then there are countries over here that are shrinking. It's a very dynamic situation. I think that economics and demography will be closer together. However, demography has not much to do with the environmental pressure and the energy resources. And that's a bold statement that goes contrary to much of what you've heard. You've heard about, oh, we are becoming too many in this world, and then we can't take care of our resources. So what does it mean that we will have in the future? Well, look here. This is how we will be. We will end up there on 12. How can we be so many? Let's jump this one and this one. Well, just Ethiopia, before I go on. I split Ethiopia into its provinces. It's difficult to make sense of Africa, but here you see Addis Ababa has less than 2 children per woman. Somali region with civil war has about 7. And most of Ethiopia is in the middle. This is their province. To understand Africa today, think about the country where 1/5 is like the most successful part of Asia. They are really growing their economy and there's a place for investment. 1/5 really need to have continuous development aid for several decades more. The middle is somewhere in between. African countries are at the same time very successful in one end. You go to the Savannah Valley in Nairobi, you see one of the finest software developers in the world working on smartphones with limitations on their software. Really, really clever people, you know. And the government has a very good software development policy in Kenya. At the same time as Kenya has removed areas with problem because neighbors are in war. Yeah, I can see someone recognize what I'm talking about. It's a country really that is like the whole world within the country. Like the whole world within the country. Facing terrorist problem in one end, lovely tourist destinations in the other end. You know. It's a challenge to manage it, and it has a great potential, and it has great challenges at the same time. This is African situation. Now, how come that the number of children will not increase and the numbers of adults will? We have reached peak child. It looks like this. Now we have more detail. Now, each of these dolls here is 100 million. This is Europe, 15 years of age, 30, 45, 60 and above. This is me. I live in Europe. I'm more than 60 years old. But I'm one of these 100 millions in this world. Same amount of people in all age group. Almost the same in America, lacking 100 million retired people, as I told you before. Africa, already today, as many children below 15 as in the entire Europe and America at the same time. Imagine going from Argentina through Brazil all the way up through US and Canada, turning right through West Europe, Turkey and Russia all the way to Vladivostok. And you won't find more children than you find in Africa. That means that if Africa becomes like Thailand tonight, and have 2 children per woman, because Thailand was like Africa some 40 years ago when I was a guest student in Thailand. They had many children per woman, they had high child mortality, now they've been successful. If Africa gets 2 children per person and they get a decent survival, these people move up, they move up like this, and they will fill up this area, and the African population will, you can see, it will double. There is no way Africa can avoid doubling. Well, an asteroid can hit the world. A Hiroshima war is not enough. This Ebola must have to convert itself to something really, really terrible, something more nasty than we've seen in the last 500 years. That can make a difference of this. But we know fairly well what will happen. The most probable is that they will fill up. Asia has stopped increasing the children. Remember? The Asian curve was down to 2. But they still have a large area here to fill up of old people. And this area is empty not because they have died, it's because they were never born. They were never born. We've had a population pyramid that has been growing. Now, instead of showing you a population pyramid, I took them out like this so you can see the gap that will be filled. And now I will show you what will happen without prolonging the life. Asia will not get an older population mainly because they will live longer. They will get an older population automatically, just by the young living their life. Look here. Old people, you may not know it in the School of Economics, but I can tell you a sad fact from the Faculty of Medicine, the old people die. There they are gone. Another sad fact for you young people is you will get older. Here you go, 15 years older, and then you will get children. We are in 2030. We go another 15 years, we all die, the rest grow older, and they have children. They all die, the rest grow older, and they have children. They all die, the rest grow older, and they have children. And we are in 2085. That's the breaking time it takes for a population. From the time when the children stop growing, the population continues to grow for another 75 years. It's breaking distance. And it's consisting of one big fill-up of adults. It's an inevitable fill-up of adults. Those environmental activists who say we have to stop at 8 billion. We can't be more. We have to stop at 7.5 billion. They are not naive. They are just bluntly ignorant. This won't happen. There's no way we can stop under 9.5 billion. This we will have. Now, there could be that we will live longer. That is here. This fill-up is not longer life. It's just living the life with the same length that it has today. This is longer life. And I'm desperately hoping to be this person. Because I can follow the annual statistics. I made a deal with my children. As long as I have one eye that can see the annual reports of statistics, they can't switch off the respirator. You know? As long as I can consume data, I want to be alive. And here, what determines here with extreme poverty? Extreme poverty goes away in Africa. Those worst off families don't need children to fetch water and firewood. If they have access to school and basic health service, contraceptives, you will get fewer in Africa. But on the other hand, you may get gender equity. And that young professional woman in Asia may find a nice husband. And they fall in love, and the pillow talk goes on, and they make babies. That may happen, you know. But as one of the leading women at the Minister of Health in Ethiopia told me, one of those who are having few children are in Addis, good men are in short supply, she said. So this is more or less what we'll tell you about this. I'll jump these questions because I want to come and show you the income distribution of the world. I want to show you the income distribution world. We made another software in Gapminder here where we show the income distribution. Now it's just number of people on each income. $1, $10, $100. In 1973, there was one big hump here just above $1, mainly Asia and Africa. And there was another hump here, mainly Europe and America, which had between $10 and $100. This way, West Europe, that way, East Europe. This way, North America, that way, South America. And it was a camel world. Think about it as a camel world with two humps, divergence. Some had been more fortunate in history, those early takeoff, West Europe, North America. Some had been less fortunate. They had been dominated politically and militarily. What has happened now? Has it improved? Yes, population has grown, and the middle incomes has grown faster on this logarithmic axis. That really shows the growth rate. And the camel dies, and we have a dromedary world with one hump only. Just think about that. It was a camel, now it's a dromedary. Sad thing, we still have almost 1 billion of our fellow human beings in extreme poverty, hardly having food for the day. There's still an enormous difference between the poorest and the richest. The difference between the poorest and the richest is wider than ever. But the hump is in the middle. And the middle, of course, is $10. It's not $50. Because it makes quite a difference to go from 1 to 10. It's actually a bigger difference for a family going from there to there than it is going from there to there. Because here, what do you have? You have electric light, you have a tap water, you have a good ceiling, you can lock your door, you have kids going to school, you have contraceptives, you have 2 children, you have a bicycle, you are saving to a motorbike. It's a decent family life in the middle. It's not good, it's far from welfare. If someone gets seriously sick, you are in problem. You may have to sell your house. But at least they are not lacking food as they are doing over there. Now, what is it that takes you out of poverty? These 2 girls are in poverty. They have to spend their day carrying water. When families are so poor, so the children are needed for labor, there's no demand for family planning. When child mortality is so high, so they don't know if they will survive, there's no demand for family planning. When all things come at the same time, you know, it's not like one factor triggers the others. It's not like economic growth will then have the effect on family size. It's not like family size will have the effect of economic growth. You know. They are interacting with bidirectional causality. Going to school brings down family size. Smaller family size enables children to go longer to school and having better food when they go to school in the morning. It's very complex to take out one factor, and I think it's a mistake. You have to understand that fertility determinants, and I think family size, average family size, is the best measure we have today of progress of human society, because it's so difficult to measure income when people are very poor. It's methodologically difficult to ask people who live almost on hunger level to ask them. It's done in the best way. Catherine Beagle, who's leading this group methodologically at the World Bank, she's absolutely brilliant in doing economic surveys. But it's methodologically more difficult than deciding family size. How do you decide family size? You have a census, you come to the house, you knock the door, you wait politely, the door opens, and of course all children come out to look who it is, and then you count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's very, very straightforward to count fertility rate. And some children may have died, but most survive. We have quite good data on fertility rate that we can use. People must get out of extreme poverty, female education, child survival, a political commitment that provide contraceptives, but also the soft issue, the right for women to decide and the swap of values of men. Men should stop being proud of how many children they have. They should start to be proud of how well their children are doing. That's swap. And that's happening all across the world. And as I showed you, it's almost 80% of the world already where we have two-child families. The average is here, 2.5. Most of the world population are already down here. How do you get away from poverty? When you get out of extreme poverty, you may say that development aid should focus on extreme poverty, but a country in sub-Saharan Africa cannot focus on only extreme poverty. They have to focus on those bright software programmers in Nairobi also. And they have to attract investment so that they have an engine in the train that drags them out of poverty. I see no contradiction between having a flourishing corporate sector in one end and then having public investments and aid in the other end of countries. I think the most stupid debate I have here is should you have economic investments and economic growth, or should you have aid and government investment? Which one solves it? Of course it's both. Of course it's both, and both have to do their role. And if the government investments and aid doesn't help the country to have economic growth within 10 years so they can start taking care of more of the cost themselves and bring children not only through primary school but secondary school and universities, the country doesn't get anywhere. So this woman, and I've been doing research for about 20 years in remote rural areas across Africa with African college, PhD students and African institutions, and she summarized it all. We had qualitative interviews are quite important to understand interconnections between different factors. This woman on her bicycle had told us, school is number one, she said. Now I can count. They can't cheat me when I go to the market to sell my product. Thank you, aid for the textbook, but thank you even more government for training the teacher and paying her salary. And thank you community members for building the schoolhouse. You see how everything comes together. And now she's going to sell her agricultural product. I have a healthy child. The child was vaccinated, the child had a mosquito net. Thank you for the aid, but thank you government for training the nurse and paying her salary, and thank you community for building the health post. Local community, national government, international investment, they come together. And infrastructure, I love infrastructure. Poor people love asphalt, because we can get further on our bicycle or if we walk, Thank you, World Bank, for the credits that gave us this road. Rights is important. My good husband worked in the city to earn money to build our house. And my right as a woman is very important. My main problem is that people may steal from me because I don't have a husband in my home. And all these other things that can happen to women. So I'm very much for women groups and women's rights, And cell phones are lovely. Because now we have a cell phone in the village, so we know the prices on the different market, and we can make decision when to harvest and when to go and sell. And agrotechnology is beautiful. If I have a better crop, I've heard about genetically modified organisms. Perhaps that can improve my crop. And the same work will give me a better reward. Why do these young people are so scared for that, They should see what sort of risks I have in my life. Those risks with the genetic modified organism is nothing. I invite them to take my place for 1 year and see what they think about it afterwards, It is really strange when those post-industrial ideas of the richest people should guide how development aid money is being used for. Just listen to these women. It took me some 5 to 10 years to realize how wise they are. You go to a remote rural village in Africa, you sit down, there's some stupid people, there's some who had a brain damage, but the vast majority of people are very clever. And among them, they have the brilliant professors who should have been professor in the business school had they had the opportunity. They are still there in the village. And when you have learned the skill to listen, and I didn't learn that, but my female African PhD student taught me to listen. And you can really understand that they get the complexity of their life. Credits are wonderful, of course. Without credits, I would have had to walk for 4 years until I could buy this bicycle. Now I got the credit. Now I can travel with the bicycle. I can pay back in 2 years. Yes, banking is good, but it's not everything. When you discuss about how to get people out of and away from poverty, you have a pet factor, isn't it? If you're in business, you like this one. Or you are an engineer, an old engineer like this one, young engineer like this one. You know, if you're sort of liberal, you like this. People who are to the left, they used to like free health service and so on, you know, right? She likes everything, and they potentiate each other. The access to credit is potentiated when she has gone to school. When the government has made the investment in school, her little business enterprise will pay off better when she gets the credit. And she, of course, needs a market. Without a market, she won't benefit. So urbanization is also good for her, because that's better price for her product. But really, who wants to be a small-scale entrepreneur in the rural area? She wants a job. Come invest, she says. Start a textile factory in my country. I want a paycheck every month. You know, I'll be a good worker. You know. And she has a dream: fertilizer and electricity. If I got a lamp in my house, my kids can do their homeworks in the evenings, and I want electricity. You know. And I don't only want solar energy for a lamp, I want a mill, so we can mill. Nothing, in all my interviews, women in rural Africa ask so much for a mill, so that they don't have to stand pounding hours every day in their life. It makes nice pictures for tourists, you know, but it's not nice to live in. It's not nice to live in. And she even wants a washing machine, of course. She's not thinking about it yet, but you wait and see. They will come when she wants the washing machine. This is the difficult to understand. This is the core of economics. How do you live on $1 a day, $10 a day, or $100 a day? If you live on $1 a day, you say, wow, $10 a day makes all the difference. Wow, I can get all those things. You know, I can get away from my poverty. I have my new house. My husband come back with the money. We are there. You know. When you are up here and you are looking down, it looks the same. It looks the same. It's very difficult to assess different and segmentation. We discussed this morning about market opportunity for health in company, having different sort of products. And the products can start moving this way, this way. Some of your product may hit all the way to these people. You have very few here. This is where people actually need aid. They need subsidized drugs over there. Here they can't pay for the patent, but they can pay for the synthesis. Here they have to pay, here they can't pay for the research with the patents, but they can pay for the synthesis. Here they have to contribute to the research and the investments to give profit so that we can get new good drugs. And this then is the challenge of the world to understand the income distribution of the world. Here, the income, the dromedary world. If I make this simple, I take it down to 7. I know they should have been tighter in the middle, but really simplified. Imagine we have 7 billion people. They're standing there from the poorest to the richest, from $500, $1,000, $2,000, $4,000, $8,000, $16,000, and $32,000. The most important thing is when you line them up like this, is that there is a doubling between each of them. The difference from the poorest billion to the richest billion is 6 doublings. It's an exponential growth. And that explains also their capacity and their consumption of energy, their consumption of drugs, their life conditions. So to make it simple, the poorest billion have open fire, both for light and for cooking. The next have a light bulb. That's what the woman was dreaming about, getting away from poverty, so her daughter could do the homework. The next, in that end, they have a refrigerator and a washing machine, and there are all these things in the kitchen, most of which are not needed. I think many remember kitchens when you're rich. There are too many things in them. There are no place left, you know, because there are so many gadgets you can buy. And you can fly on holiday. There you have a bicycle, here you have a motorbike. This gradual change, you know, how life is getting better. Over here you have the consumption. So what is the problem now in the world with the environment and the resources? There are limitations on resources. There is a great risk that we get the dangerous climate change. That's how I put it. Great risk that we get dangerous climate change. Not in short run, but in long run. Activists may overestimate the risk in short run, but they may at the same time underestimate the long-term risks. And is the problem that there will be 1 or 2 more added, 3 more added here as they grow up and become adults? Or is the problem the consumption in this end? To make it simple, is it overpopulation, overconsumption? It's overconsumption, of course. Because we will be 10 to 11 billion. And we live jointly on this world. And this billion here have to live in a way that can be shared by 10 billion by the end of the century. Simple as that. All the idea is that you cannot live like us. You should be happy down there. You should play a flute under the mango trees and don't get any motorbikes, you know. You can have a bicycle, you know, and can make a solar energy lamp, and that's it, you know. And you should hand wash your clothes for the next 3 generations. Don't even think about the washing machine. This attitude I find even by some activists here. They can't conceive a world where everyone lives on the same level. Or more or less. We don't have identical. We will have different value judgments. It's interesting to see now how this turns out if we look at energy. This is the oil we use in the world. This is the coal. This is the gas during 1 year. This is nuclear energy. This is bio and hydro. And now you're waiting for solar and wind. Here comes solar and wind. It's nasty of me to make a joke because solar energy has an enormous potential. Remember, already in the beginning, I told you that the tourist hotels would work on desalinated seawater with solar energy in Somalia in the future. I perhaps didn't mention, but this is what we have a great hope, but it's just 1% now. The world run on fossil. The world's run on fossil. The fight in Ukraine now, where the line should go between that little territory, Russian-speaking, Ukrainian-speaking, is about the railway junction that goes to the coal mines. That's what they are fighting about. And it's about the coal export. The separatists will live exporting coal to main Ukraine. How is it divided? How is this fossil fuel, this burning that results in carbon dioxide emission, how is that divided over these 7 billion? The richest take 1/2 of it. The second richest take 1/2 of what's left. Now you know what the third richest will do. They take 1/2 of what's left. And the fourth take 1/2 of what's left. And the fifth do the same. And the sixth do the same. And the seventh get a little kerosene for a kerosene lamp. And that's it. If you add 1 or 2 billion here, or 3 billion here, doesn't matter because they consume so little. The whole carbon dioxide emission in the future is about these 3 billions over here. This one has at least stopped increasing. This one is now increasing, it's China. This comes Turkey, Brazil, Indonesia, other successful emerging markets, they are following up here. And the attitude up here has been that we should reduce in percent of what we use. That's the Kyoto Agreement. That's a very strange idea. And that these ones should stop at a lower level while this slowly is coming down. I was in Davos, in World Economic Forum, and sat in, this was some years back, sat in the meeting about energy policy in the world. There were people from business and people from government. And it ended up so that on one side of the table was sitting the OECD, the Old West. On the other side was sitting the main emerging economies. And there was the Minister of Energy of India. And after some discussions, you know, when some on the Old West side talked about those countries who increased their emission, he got angry. It's rare to see angry Indians. They're often very polite, very soft, but he got really angry. He said, it's you who destroyed the climate. It's you who have been burning all this coal for 150 years. You know, and now we have the problem. And then suddenly it turned like Gandhi. And he said, but we forgive you. Because you didn't know what you were doing. We cannot blame retrospectively because no one knew what this might lead to. But from this day, we count per capita. And that really struck me. How can we say, India, look at India with Modi today. Modi is serious. Everyone is surprised, I think, about what he goes forward. He's going to fix the infrastructure. He's going to have a stable business situation there. He's going to improve the education. He's going to have a stable government, what he wants. He wants to make India flourish, take away extreme poverty, have decent life for the Indian people. You know? I'm quite impressed with what he has done, especially since I didn't think he would do it like the way he has done. Should he stay down there while they continue to burn like this? Look here. This is the carbon dioxide emission per person on this axis. This is the income per person on this axis. Here is the United States and United Kingdom. United Kingdom, United States, 1900. They were emitting so much. This is how much carbon dioxide they emit per person. The size of the bubble is the total amount emitted. They were the successful countries. Money went together with carbon dioxide. This is how it developed. The United States became the leader in the world and also the leading emitter of carbon dioxide. Down here, aren't they cute? China and India. This is why he was there. Already in 1940, they were emitting almost nothing, although they had bigger populations. Then this happened, and then, you know, United States was going through the roof there almost, you know. And here, can you see China coming? With Deng Xiaoping, China is going for the money, the bubble is increasing, and they're going upwards. There they are. Yeah, of course, China are now on the same level as you find United Kingdom and Italy. Italy and China on the same level, so now China has the same responsibility as Italy. But these ones have enormous responsibility of doing something about this. And the interesting thing is if you mark China and United States, you drag them backwards, you can see at the same economic level, China is lower than the United States. It's really different. And I don't think we can any international agreement if the focus is not on this end. So then people say, should we live a worse life? No, I think we have to be more clever. More energy efficiency, guiding the innovation to a North system. There's another reason for going away from the fossil. If you don't want to have as leaders in the world Putin and the king of Saudi Arabia, and now you have to buy from Islamic State oil also. That's not successful. We don't want a life like that. So there are other reasons, and oil prices will go up eventually. So there's very good reason to swapping. And this has to be swapped in a way so that we plan for the rest of the world. I think the companies that will have these solutions, they will also have the solution for the world. They will be successful. It was interesting to hear the big washing machine producer that I lectured to in Sweden, where the CEO said, we are going to build, that was an executive meeting internally, we are going to build the most energy efficient washing machines ever seen. And they should be recyclable with all the materials. And they're going to use less water than ever had been possible. And they're going to have kinder detergents, you know. Because, what was it? Because my daughter is concerned about the environment? No. Because I know regulations will come. I know regulations will come. Instead of wasting money lobbying against the regulation, he used the money to invest and hit the market when the regulation comes, being there in top. I think those companies will be. And he had judged the sound scientific evidence that these regulations will come. Water regulation will also come. So it's very interesting. Many people see that this behavioral change will not be the main change. It will be to guide the market forces to solve the problem in the right direction. That has to be the most important thing. And perhaps energy efficiency, more important than green production of energy. So these are the kids that die every year. Why do they die? They die down there. Can you see? Most children die, 4 million die there, 2 million there. This is actually 500,000 now. Burning fossil fuel saved the life of children. Because being rich saved the life of children. Because there's no rich country who doesn't manage to get down child mortality. There's a very close connection to economic growth and child mortality. So These, I have to rush through this now, I think. The two-child families, they are the ones who will increase their consumption. It's not the poor people on the other side having many children. When you get two-child families, because then you get economic growth, you get the demographic dividend. We know that countries grow faster in the period when they have two-child families and before they have a lot of old people. And then this is then the West and the rest, 1975. Airline is the line where you can buy an air ticket for holiday for the families. We have complemented, the poverty line is in this end, we invented the airline in that one. So you can see the high consumer end, and they can afford all the good drugs you develop, they can afford. They don't have to make rational, you don't have to make special prices, they should pay for the research, you know. Now, 1975, there was only 30% who was outside the West. Today, it's 50% who's outside the West. Half the world economy is outside that richest billion today. Richest billion take half, the other take the other half. But most of the growth is on the other side. Most of the growth is on the other side. And in just 20 years, it may look like this. 75% of the high-income segment in the world will be outside the West. It's really swapping against Asia. The center of gravity of the world economy has turned around at Iceland in the mid-1970s, now going back to Asia. It will land somewhere in the Himalayas between China and India. That will be the center of gravity of the world economy. And I end by photos. Data is not enough. You must also see images. I will end by honoring George W. Bush. It's very rare that Swedish public health professors honor President George W. Bush. So it will make you remember what I say in the end. You know? He's standing here the 15th of November 2008. He's broke. He has a big problem. He needs to put money in bank, insurance, and in car industry. He's called the lame duck by his people. His last month as a president. And he asked his friend, what do? You have no money. You ask your friends. He asked Brown. Brown said, no, I have no money. I have Northern Rock, you know. Merkel said, oh no, I don't have any money. I have Opel. And Sarkozy said, I don't have any money. I have Renault, you know. And I have to put money in there. So what do? You have no money. Your friends have no money. You need new friends. The old friends doesn't work any longer. He needs friends from that 50% of world economy that is outside G7. It makes sense, doesn't it? I like when data fits with real life that you can catch on photo. So this is the official photo, and if we zoom in, we can see now that those who stand closest to Bush and this picture is obviously those who lended him most money. And it's interesting that it was even marked on the floor where they should stand. Abdullah is standing on his mark. Yintao has moved a little. Can you see? His red mark is there, but he has moved, you know? And he's gone closer to Bush here. And then Bush gets nervous and he leans over like this. He doesn't like him, you know. So, and he rubs shoulder with the socialist Latino trade union leader. But this is nice. This is what I honor, because Lula and the Indonesian president are democratically elected. Unfortunately, it is those two leaders who are not democratically elected that have most of the money. So had he been rational, he would have leaned like this and rubbed shoulder here. But, you know, he liked Americans and Democrats better in the end. You know? So it's interesting. You can see, no, you see Sarkozy, how sad he is? How come that France is on this side of a Muslim and a communist, he says, you know? He doesn't like the position there, but he had no money, so he had to live with it, you know? And who saved the American economy in its deepest crisis in this century? It was a socialist, a communist, and two Muslims. That's a new world. That's a new world. That's a converging world. They came up like this. Turkey is there with Erdogan. Mexico is there. India is there, you know. Gapminder tried to help you to do this. We took the name from London Underground, you know, and we want you to upgrade your worldview. And don't think it's difficult, you know. Remember, Bush did it, all can do it. Thank you very much.